Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Reckoning of Roku chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 32, which is called Not Alone. Once again, YouTube channel membership is enabled if you want to help support the channel, and subscribing also helps. So this is a pretty long chapter, but it's also a very important chapter. It's a Malia point of view chapter, but it's also the chapter where Malia finally meets Roku. So we have our little mini team avatar here meeting for the first time here, and we address a lot of things as we begin to set up towards the end of the book. Who's going where, going into the kind of final sequence, and also Gyatso and Roku finally talking through their issues, as well as us getting stuff like the what happened to Yama backstory. We get that in the text for the first time here. So we'll jump in here. So it's Malia waiting for Roku and Gyatso to return. As this happens, she kind of remembers how the plan went down with the hog monkeys. She diced up their favorite food, mangoes. Gyatso spread the scent using airbending, and that's how the hog monkeys got across the whole village. Then she senses someone coming and heads towards them kind of sneakily, and when she arrives, she sort of catches them by surprise, and so you get the reaction of Roku being like, meeting Malia like this for the first time, but Gyatso lights up the second he sees her, and this makes Malia blush. So there is that hint of romance between Gyatso and Malia that we have in the book, which I think we saw something about a blush in a previous chapter, and you definitely get the sense as we go forward. So immediately, Roku notices how easy the two are around each other, and they have become friends in just a few days. He's like, "You must be Malia. Gyatso's told me absolutely nothing about you. I'm Roku, but you must already know that." And then they sit down to discuss things. And one of the interesting points here is Malia's kind of first reaction to, she's sitting down talking with the Avatar, a being that Ulo has told her about in his stories. And so we get the idea of what stories did he tell about the Avatars. Ulo enjoyed telling the clan stories he'd gathered on his travels about the different avatars. They were largely haunting cautionary tales about the dangers of unchecked powers. But Gyatso had confirmed Malia's suspicions that there was little truth in this. But the image of the avatar as a glorified executioner lingered in her mind as she returned to the boy's gaze. So Ulo spreading lies about the avatar as well, though I suppose depending on what avatar you maybe choose, there might be some value to this, in that to a certain degree, if you present Kyoshi in the wrong way, she can come across as like a major kind of threat, but still the fundamental idea of presenting the avatar as just someone who kills people. But you can maybe understand Ulo, having maybe only heard stories about Kyoshi, how potentially that story kind of comes about, given what we will go on to sort of address with Kyoshi in her later years towards the end of the book. But anyway, we then get basically all the characters catching each other up on what they did. They don't show it in the text, but they just describe that. Roku recapped Gyatso on what he was just through since they left each other. Gyatso does the same to Roku, and then we can address the kind of the new stuff, basically. Roku's like, "Oh, so you realized you were wrong and you came back. I realized you wouldn't stand a chance without me." Malia notes that, there's an edge to their words, but something softer cushioned the exchange. So still something that needs to be dealt with, but some of the anger has definitely gone away. That the two do really care for each other, they are friends. And Malia wonders, what does it feel like to share such a mutual bond with somebody, and hope that someday she might know. And it's interesting because she doesn't kind of realize that she kind of already has this in a way with Gyatso, even though it's still kind of early days. Because Roku and Gyatso haven't known each other that much longer than Malia's known Gyatso, so it's a bit of an interesting one. But anyway, we addressed a few things here of just Malia getting comfortable speaking around Roku of do you vouch for him? I do, for some reason. And she gets Roku up to speed about this is my story, the scouts are meant to kill all outsiders. I'm not sure if you knew that before. And so Roku thinks to himself, okay, if that's the case, why is Ulo keeping me alive? He's going to do anything he wants and plans to do to protect the island from outsiders, but I don't understand why he's just keeping me alive. What's the deal? What about the Earthbenders? Anything about them? Surely we would have heard if there was a fight. But Malia points out that no, Amihan is extraordinarily stealthy. She could have captured people without anyone ever knowing. Kind of telling us that, okay, here's the idea of realistically what's happened to them overall. So that's that whole situation. And Roku just acknowledges that, yes, with the Earthbenders, I'm going to have to stop them from doing what they need to do. We get a quick recap on Owen. He's gone back to his ship, waiting for the other Earthbenders to return so they can leave, basically. So that's a nice little detail on Owen. And then we turn around to the idea of Gyatso kind of realizes we have to address a point when it comes to Sozin. Because they already talk about the idea that Roku brings up that I think the Earth Kingdom might also be interested in the cave's power, the sacred cave's power, rather than just the mineral that's on this island. But Gyatso then points out that that's true, but I also think that the cave's power might be the real reason Sozin is interested in the island. And so this is, on the Roku side of things, what caused the issue between Roku and Gyatso. So he gets a bit angry again, doesn't want to talk about this, but Gyatso kind of stands his ground and is like, yes, this again, I know you don't want to hear it because he's your best friend, but you're the Avatar. You can't forget, even for a moment, that he's also the future leader of the Fire Nation. And it threatens to turn into another argument. Roku's like, what do you have against Sozin? And Gyatso prepares himself to maybe get into the full-on angry mode and go at Roku again. And Malia is watching this whole thing go down. And she knows Gyatso is probably about to storm off again. So she looks at Gyatso in the eyes and is like, tell him about Yama. Like, help him to understand. Like, nothing will be resolved if you just walk off. He needs to understand why you feel so strongly about this, to explain what happened before and now. And she realizes that because Gyatso had told her everything, including the fact that he hasn't actually told Roku yet about Yama, she gets that this is the key point ultimately, because this is why, in a way, she understands Gyatso so well, so Roku needs this as well. So here is the story about what happened to Yama. So Gyatso says, she was 2 years older than me. Last year, she was on a relief mission in the southwest of the Earth Kingdom. The Western Kingdom Trading Company, the same company that sent those Earthbenders here, had been mining outside of this one village for years. They had ruined the soil, poisoned the water, broken the land. Those who couldn't afford to move away stayed and kept working in the mines. They started to get sick, and the more they worked, the sicker they became. Soon, nearly the entire village was dying. Yama and the other air nomads had basically gone to care for these people before they died. So already a pretty terrible portrayal of the Western Kingdom Trading Company here. Mining this place and the people of this village to an insane degree. Working these dying people, continuing to work them just to get every last drop, every last resource, all the money out of what's available here. And this links into what Gyatso said in his rant to Roku about the idea of not caring about the people who kind of do the work to get the products and stuff like that, to make the money fundamentally. And so he continues, the dying miners didn't matter to the company. They'd outlived their use. The coal or ore or whatever had nearly run out, and the company was preparing to leave. But they must have dug too much or too deep. A sinkhole opened. It swallowed a huge chunk of the mountainside, including the village in which Yama and a few of the other air nomads had been helping. There were no survivors. And this is the truth of the situation. And it does help to really explain a lot about why Gyatso so intently kind of went after Roku over, you know, what happened here. Roku immediately is like, I'm sorry, Gyatso. But it gets into the idea of he's trying to connect with Roku here of like, I understand the kind of sadness, the anger that you had after Yasu's death. I had the same. I've been angry at the Western Kingdom Trading Company, who only cared for their profits. At the Council of Elders, who decided there was nothing to be done besides meditate on the tragedy. And at myself, for not being on that trip with her because I had asked permission to stay behind to focus on my airbending training to master the next tier. So there's the reason for Gyatso's anger. He's angry at the Western Kingdom Trading Company for their severe lack of care for the workers and for being the reason the air nomads had to go there in the first place, only caring about profits. Angry at the leaders of the air temples for being the ones to kind of help him, trying to help him through this. And the only thing that they have to offer is meditate on your feelings, basically, on the tragedy. And of course, he's also angry at himself because maybe something different would have happened if he was there. And he blames himself because the reason he didn't go on the trip is because he wanted to focus on his progress. So in a way, that little bit there at the end highlights why the impact has kind of been on Gyatso's airbending. He blames his progress at airbending effectively on what happened. That because I focused on that and my training, I lost my sister. And so this is why the progress almost ground to a halt with the loss of his sister. So this, of course, helps to link into the idea of, okay, how does this relate to what happened in their previous argument? It's that it relates to it because you have to kind of equate almost the Western Kingdom Trading Company to Sozin as being a company, people in a leadership or will get into a leadership position, leaders of a nation, and that these are people who will use and manipulate people below them to their advantage. And the point here is, Roku, can you even in any way see that Sozin maybe would do something like this given the position that he is in already and is going to be in? That's why Gyatso was so annoyed at Roku just kind of default defending Sozin just because he's his friend and ignoring maybe some other aspects of this. So then we get into the idea of yes, you told me I needed to learn to love Yama in a new way now that she was gone, and I think I have. I told Malia all about her and I felt better, lighter, freer, and after all this is over, I'd love to tell you more about my sister than how she died. And I'd love to hear more about Yasu. And Roku's like, I'd like that too. You helped me see my situation more clearly. I just want to help you do the same. You know Prince Sozin better than anyone else in the world, Roku. Please, be honest with us and yourself. Is there any chance he would try to use the Sacred Cave's power if he knew about it? And Roku pauses, and he says it's possible. Even if I don't want to believe it, but I promise I'll confront him about it when the time is right. And we get this very nice resolution to this. Gyatso didn't gloat. He didn't press the issue. He simply nodded, trusted. And then, really nice moment here, Roku and Gyatso hug, and it's a really kind of long hug here, and Malia is like, oh, this is kind of a quite intimate kind of moment here. But she says, in her head, it was a beautiful thing to witness. In her 16 years, nobody had ever held her like that. So I was asking in one of the previous chapter analysis videos the idea of what is this wound, the reason she doesn't have a strong relationship with her parents? Well, there's certainly a pretty crazy statement for you to kind of say about your parents, that you've never in a way felt that connection, that a love like that two people just kind of hugging and having a connection is potentially one of the strongest displays of emotion you've ever seen. That speaks to obviously a bit of a disconnection between her and her parents and just the way they approach things. Now, it doesn't explain the why when it comes to why did her parents treat her that way and kind of keep her at arm's length. That's what we're waiting to see, of course. And then we get a connection to one of the other previous chapters. Roku says, may Yama's flame light our way, Gyatso. And he says, and may Yasu's do the same. And then Roku says, I'm sorry, I couldn't have made it this far without you. And I don't think I'll make it much further unless you stay by my side. You're not a failed airbender. Your anger and pain are still fresh. Like you said, I get that. But I also get what it's like to long for healing. And I'm happy you're finding a way forward. And Gyatso says he's sorry too. Your hair doesn't look stupid. And then apologizes for saying he was a false avatar. And And he notes this interesting detail that our elders teach us that the avatar is always the exact person the world needs at that given moment. Kyoshi's light found you for a specific reason, even if you can't see why yet. I have faith in that. I have faith in you. And Roku then says, too bad Sister Disha doesn't share that faith. And he's referring to the idea of what the wording from their argument, which was that like Sister Disha was right, you shouldn't be the avatar, and that was the direct interpretation. But Gyatso's like, oh no, I didn't mean that like the avatar should have been someone else. I meant that you can't really be the true avatar until, like Sister Disha says, until you stop seeing yourself as a Fire National first. That's the part I agreed with her on, which is the point that Roku kind of already is beginning to acknowledge himself, basically. So, really nice resolution to this kind of conflict here overall. I like that they kind of took some time apart. They kind of did grow a little bit on their own. Kind of Roku getting a chance to sort of like be the avatar a little bit on his own, interacting with Ulo. Gyatso getting a different perspective, speaking to Malia, and then them coming back together and talking through this, of Roku now giving the opportunity to like, yes, I shouldn't just give Sozin the benefit of the doubt. I will, like, you know, think of him from an outside perspective as well as a friend, and that, yes, you know, he definitely might want to do this because he's always been interested in power and bending technique, so it does make a lot of sense. But then finally getting the actual backstory with Gyatso is just as impactful because it's this tragic abuse of power, and that this is the fundamental problem Gyatso has. He doesn't like it when he sees other people in power abuse it, and especially to the people who don't have that power, which is what it felt like Roku was defending in the previous argument. So, interesting stuff. But we go on. We then shift to Roku kind of connecting a few dots of like, oh yeah, Ulo said something about like pressing clan matters. He lied to me about something when I asked about the Earthbenders and said there's some issue going on with the Grove. And this is where they kind of figure out that, oh yeah, I guess Amihan must be hunting down the people. That's the only way to explain all of this. Meaning the prisoners must be being held in this grove over here. So they kind of decide at this point that I think what needs to happen here is I'm going to have to leave you two. I'm going to have to go back to Ulo, or he'll come out here suspicious and investigate. That will leave you two free to potentially investigate the Grove and, you know, free the prisoners, basically, to stop this from becoming a major point of conflict, basically. Then he brings up that, oh, yeah, Ulo has invited me to meet the cave spirit at the equinox. And Malia's like, oh, I almost forgot with everything happening that the equinox is coming up. And so she tells them this story about the ghost spider, which is effectively just the idea of, I suppose, this is the way she views how Ulo is going to kind of manipulate the situation here. He describes that the ghost spider is different than normal spiders in that it doesn't trap its prey with a web. Instead, it hangs down from the forest canopy, drops onto its target, and sinks its fangs into the poor creature. The venom paralyzes the creature while its organs turn to mush, basically. The ghost spider then pulls the paralyzed prey back to its nest and feeds its babies, a process made possible by the freshly liquefied innards. And she explains that nobody in our clan besides Ulo knows much about the Equinox ritual that's supposedly responsible for maintaining young Gibb's goodwill, except that it requires sacrifices. I'm wondering if he's not planning to take any pig chickens and cow pigs with him tomorrow. And so the idea is, wait, is Roku going to be the ultimate sacrifice in this ritual? That Ulo might think that he can gain every favor of the spirit, or even more energy to the sacred cave if he sacrifices the avatar during this ritual. That's how this might actually work. But again, Roku thinks to himself, and he asks Gyatso about this. You probably know more about this than I do. Are there spirits that accept human sacrifices? Like, because this has always been the question about young Gib. This doesn't really fit a lot of the dynamics that we know about when it comes to spirits. Gyato says, I don't think it's likely. There are definitely humans out there who mistakenly think blood sacrifices can earn the favor of spirits. And they address that, like, yeah, this is probably what Ulo wants to do with you as the ultimate sacrifice. So, yes, Roku decides, I have to go back to the village. This is the only way to, create an opening for you guys to free the Earthbenders. And so Gyatso asks Roku to promise me you won't kill him. It will only make things worse. Roku promises, but there's a clear sense from both Roku and Malia that they both don't feel that this will be able to be resolved without Ulo dying. Just because everything points to the idea of there will be no talking this guy down. If he's constructed this many lies about the history of the clan, it just feels like there's no chance of turning someone who's this devoted to what he's doing around. So the idea is Roku and Malia are actually understanding of this situation, that it might need to go this way. Roku's going to try to not kill him, but it may end up just going that way anyway. So, and then we get the really interesting ending of the chapter. It's really nice because this is why this chapter is from Malia's perspective. Gyatso is like, okay, thank you. And then he turns to Malia and says, what do you think? Roku handles Ulo while we go find the Earthbenders? And she's caught off guard because Roku and Gyatso are including her as a member of the team. She was fully expecting them to just decide this on their own because it's the Avatar and his companion. But the fact that they ask her as if like her opinion matters just as much in the team is this really cool moment for her to get. And she reflects on the Air Nomad's philosophy of harmonies, and that the three of them as like a team are vibrating kind of very well together here. And she feels this unfamiliar sense of belonging and understanding of who she was supposed to be. And she agrees with this plan. And then Roku brings the team together. You know, he puts a hand on both of their shoulders and is like, doesn't it feel good to know we are not alone? And so the team is going to go do what they have to do. Roku's going to go back to Ulo, and Gyatso and Malia will go to the grove and see what's happening with the suspected prisoners, because they assume that that's what's happened to the Earthbenders. They've been captured by Amihan, more than likely. But I love that ending of the chapter there of like, effectively, this is the moment where it kind of gets confirmed. Malia is also an Avatar companion here. She's included here as part of the team, and she feels that this is what she's meant to do. This is the first time she's really felt like she belongs. And that, I think, is a really strong note to end on for her character. So that's where the chapter ends. Really good chapter here. The character work, I think, has built to this. So you get the Yama reveal, you get the Gyatso and Roku kind of reunion, and also this strong moment at the end of Malia included as part of the team. It all works, I think, really nicely together as we just get the idea of, okay, Roku's going into this, equinox meeting with Ulo and also Youngib, expecting something to happen here. Is he going to be confident enough? Is he going to be able to do something here to stop this from going absolutely wrong? And then we know how powerful Amihan is, so is Gyatso and Malia going to be strong enough to maybe deal with her while they free the Earthbenders? And then Malia's already failed once at trying to convince the Earthbenders to head back. If they do get freed, is that going to be a simple end, or is that just going to cause more chaos? It's a complicated ending that we are building towards, certainly. But I like the character resolution. It explains Gyatso, I think, really, really well. The Roku finally beginning to kind of open his eyes up a little bit to maybe the bad actions of Sozin to a certain degree is good. And just having it be from Malia's point of view and getting just those little moments of her seeing the big reunion hug and the insight that she'd never really seen something like that, and she has never had a relationship like that, is telling, but it's also quite sad and reflects quite poorly on her relationship with her family, of course. But interesting stuff to end the chapter for sure. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on especially I think of what I really want to see people's thoughts on is the Yama backstory, the resolution to Roku and Gyatso's conflict. What are your thoughts there? But otherwise, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.